I've cultivated people who are in the arena with me. They are going to battle against themselves. They are really taking on their own personal growth and really willing to look at themselves in a deep way. When you have a group around you who's willing to do that, and you're also able to share in a very safe space what's coming up for you along the way, it normalizes the fears so you don't get stuck there. Today, I want to talk about expanders. And this is something I've talked about before when discussing the different kinds of community that you want to have around you as you build your big dreams. And expanders, or people who show you what's possible, are a really, really important community to have around you. But there's actually 4 unique kinds of expanders that I believe you need to have in order to truly step into your full potential. And this is one of the reasons why we this year in 2024 are going to be creating a space for women who are operating at a higher level of business. They've already achieved multiple 6 or 7 figures in revenue, and they're just at that sticky growth point where there are less people around you. If you haven't been cultivating that network, there may be less people in your life that you can really share your wins with, that you can share your wildest big dreams with, and that understand the unique challenges of the stage of business that you're in. So I'll share a little bit more about that at the end, because we are creating this really special, very intimate space for high achieving women within our community to connect. I am so stoked for it. But I want to go into these 4 types of expanders because you might feel like, okay, yes, I have expanders. I have people around me who show me what's possible. But I want you to get granular, especially if you're someone who has massive goals for this year and for your business, for your personal life. This is going to be really important, and you might be missing 1 or 2 of these. Now, in my life, I have plenty of friends who actually serve as all 4 of these. I have friends that serve as 2 or 3 of these categories. So you're going to have a mix, but I want you to really do an analysis of your life, of your current inner circle. And I want you to be honest, and maybe even as you listen to this, write down the names of the people that you're thinking of who play this role for you. And I want you to make sure that you have a few people who fall into each of these categories, because when you do, I believe your next level gets fast-tracked. And I'm going to talk about that, about why that is along the way. But let's get into these 4 categories of expanders. There's really 4 types, and each of these serves to normalize something that you really need to normalize if you're going to step into your next level without encountering the same level of resistance that you might if you don't have evidence for the fact that this is possible. And that's ultimately what an expander does, is they show you what's possible, but they also help to plant subconscious evidence in your brain. Like, think about computer files. And if you don't have the files to see that what you want to do is possible, it's just going to take more effort, because your brain has to collect the evidence and the know-how and the steps and the strategies in order to get there. But when you have people around you, whether you're direct friends with them or they could even just be people on the internet that you have followed and you learn from them or you take their courses, what it does is it shortens the time span for how long it's going to take you to build that evidence, build those files and the know-how in order to step into that goal for yourself. So the first kind of expander is one that normalizes your wildest dreams. Someone who right now, the way they live their life, their everyday normal Tuesday, is your wildest dream. And I want you to think about what this does. So for me, I have really big goals for my life. Places I want to live, places I want to travel, experiences I want to have. And there are people right now who have the means and have the flexibility and have the lifestyle where something that would be like a vision board experience for me, they are just doing that today on a normal Tuesday. And what can happen is if we're not conscious of it, sometimes we block these expanders out because it triggers a little bit of jealousy or envy. But I want you to welcome that feeling in. I want you to welcome in things that you see, and it sparks a seed of whether you call it jealousy or envy or just desire in you. What is essentially showing you is that it's possible, that if someone else could achieve it, it's possible for you too. And having these kind of expanders, whether they're people that you know or just people that you observe, but whose everyday life looks like your vision board, it looks like your wildest dreams. What it starts to do is it shows your brain evidence that it's possible. Now, where this can be especially powerful is if you are able to also see behind the scenes. So I want to break this down a little bit more because I think we can all see how just having a vision board or just looking at someone else's life online and the highlight reel of that can definitely be inspiring. That can definitely plant that evidence, showing your brain what's possible. But where it's actually most effective in helping you close the gap in your own mind and your own pathway to get there is when you have people who normalize your wildest dreams, but they also take you behind the scenes. So whether this for me has been, whether it's in masterminds or just personal friends of mine that I've asked them directly to walk me through, okay, show me exactly how you got from point A to point B. I remember, for example, being in my very first mastermind, and this was super uncomfortable for me, but I was in this room with all of these people who were making far more than me. And I remember this one specific woman stood up and she was sharing about her business year. This was our first get together. And she shared a number that she made in a month. That was, at that time, the most I'd ever made in my business in a year. And I remember having this moment. It was a total expander moment, realizing, oh, wow, I have direct access to someone who is living what I would consider like a wildest dream scenario right now. And I remember being so intimidated and so afraid to do this. But at lunch, I went and specifically chose to sit next to her. And I said, you completely expanded my mind and what is possible with what you shared today. And thank you for sharing that. I'm wondering if I can ask you a couple of questions about what it looked like to scale to this point. And I remember she was so generous and she was so honored that I acknowledged her like that, even though for me, I felt like I was like the awkward girl who was like, hi, you're more successful than me. Can you tell me how you did it? But I had invested to be in this room. I had invested to be in community with these people, and they were more than willing to share. Not just the highlight reel, but also the nitty gritty behind the scenes details that showed my brain a different approach to reaching that goal than I had currently thought of. And this is actually one of the reasons why we've structured the retreat that we're doing in March, because I want to bring in speakers who are willing to share those details, not just the highlight reel of what they've achieved and maybe a few tips, but an intimate setting where we can actually sit and pick apart their exact roadmap and demystify it. Because essentially that's what this type of expander does. Yes, they show you it's possible, they plant evidence, but when you can get that behind the scenes, nitty gritty view of how they did it and the challenges that they faced and how they're no different than you. Truly, they're no different than you. And maybe it's how much they've invested in things like ads or the team that they had around them. To demystify the success we see outwardly that, yes, validates that it's possible, but what really helps to shorten the gap between where you are now and where you want to be is someone who's willing to pull back that curtain and show you how they got there. So that really is the first type of expander. And you want to really sit down and think, okay, who in my life, whether it's someone I know personally or just someone I follow on the internet, who right now is that person for me or people for me who are normalizing my wildest dream? And do I have some who are willing to pull back the curtain, either in a small mentorship setting, maybe on their podcast, maybe they're just someone who shares a lot of detail on their social media, but someone who's really willing to pull back the curtain and not just show you where they've gotten to and normalize that, but also be willing to share how. That's the key combination there. So take a minute, think about or write down the people in your life right now who fit this category. Or if you don't have them, put a star next to this one, because your goal for this year is going to be to find these kind of expanders wherever you're missing them. The next kind of expander is someone who normalizes your fears and your challenges. This is huge, okay? Because if you're someone with massive goals like me, there's a lot of inner stuff that shows up. There's a lot of inner growth that has to happen in order for you to step into the person you want to become. And there's major fears and challenges that come along with that. And what can happen is when we're just going along in our business and we're encountering some of these things, if we don't hear anyone else talking about them, we feel like we're the only ones. And I remember when I was writing my first book, and this ultimately became a big inspiration behind the Powerhouse Women community to create a space where, yes, we're talking about our biggest, wildest, most unapologetic dreams, but we're also talking about our challenges so that the person who's a step or two behind us knows that when they get to that point that they hit imposter syndrome, even if they're really successful, that it's normal. And the further along I've gone, the more I realize that every new level has new challenges, has new mindset blocks, new fears show up. And I'm really, really blessed to have, over the last 10 years, cultivated a group of girlfriends where we share the really tough stuff. Probably not things that will ever end up on a podcast, or they're really personal, very deep things that just won't ever be shared in a public setting. But I've cultivated people who are in the arena with me. They are going to battle against themselves. They are really taking on their own personal growth and really willing to look at themselves in a deep way. And it takes a certain type of person who's really willing to do that depth of personal development work. But when you have a group around you who's willing to do that, and you're also able to share in a very safe space what's coming up for you along the way, it normalizes the fears so you don't get stuck there. Because for me, where I used to get stuck is if I thought I was the only one facing that challenge. I thought I was the only one having that fear or feeling like an imposter. And then I stopped because I thought, oh, well, this feeling is just telling me that I shouldn't be doing this. And what I don't want to see is I don't want to see you give up on your big dreams because you're hitting those points where all that's happening is you're being challenged so that you can grow through it. You're being challenged so that you can overcome this fear and step into the version of yourself that you need to be. But if you don't know that it's normal and you don't have people around you, expanders around you who normalize these fears as they come up, you are more likely to get stuck or just feel really lonely. And what I love is, now having the group of girlfriends that I have, and so many of them you've already heard on the podcast, having people around me who are also committed to that level of taking themselves on, that level of personal growth. What's so cool is that I don't have to go through all of the lessons. When you're willing to share and you have that close, intimate group of friends where you can share the really deep personal challenges with, it helps you not only speed through them if you are faced with that same challenge, but sometimes it helps you avoid the challenge altogether because you can learn from each other's lessons and you can help one another avoid at least some of the pitfalls. So who in your life right now are the people who are really in the arena with you? And when I say that, I mean they are operating with the same level of intention. They are really taking on their own personal growth at the same level that you are. And they're people who you feel, even if you don't have this kind of relationship yet, but you feel like they might be the type of people, both who are authentic and willing to share, but also they're a safe space for you to share and process through some of your fears and challenges. I would say this is the one that has taken me the longest time to develop because it does require trust And there absolutely have been times in the past where I thought it was a relationship where it was that type of friend, and then maybe I got burned or it just ended up not being a match. So if you realize that this is one that feels a little tender for you, or you really have had trouble trusting people in the past, just know that it does take some time and there may be pitfalls along the way. But this one of all four has, in this season of my life, been the most expansive for me, is having a group of expanders. And I could count on one hand how many of these women I have in my life, but you don't need a lot. And this group has been the most expansive for me because I'm at this level of personal growth, and I've shared a lot about this on the podcast, where some pretty big stuff is coming up. And as it comes to the surface, what's so beautiful is I'm able to move beyond it and I feel so much lighter. And a big part of that has been having these safe spaces where I'm able to share and learn from other people who are taking themselves on the same way that I am. So expanders who normalize your fears and your challenges. Who in your life right now, or maybe this is an area where you're looking to call in these types of expanders, but just jot down any names, either potential expanders for this category or people that you have who have really done this for you. Because at the end, yes, we want to look for, okay, where are you missing some of these? But also it's a cool opportunity to maybe share this episode with them, along with an acknowledgement just to say, hey, after listening to this, I realize you've been an expander for me, and I just really want to thank you. So that could be a really nice way to acknowledge the people in your life who have done this for you. The third type of expander is an expander who normalizes your growth and your ambition. This has been a big one, okay? This was a big one for me, especially as I was going beyond like the 6-figure mark in the business, really starting to have some major momentum, and my goals were big. I mean, my goals are still massive, but it was this point where a lot of the people that I had been growing with for the last few years maybe weren't growing at the same pace or didn't even want to. And that's the thing, is we have to really be careful that we might put expectations on people, like the people that we start out with and we grow with in the beginning are going to be the same people we grow with 5 or 10 years later. And that's not likely going to be the case. Maybe it is for you, and that's amazing if it is. But in my journey, I have often found myself as one of the most ambitious people in my friend group. One of the people who, it hasn't always happened really fast, but I just have this commitment to my own growth at a level that has me look like I evolve really quickly. To me, it always feels like it's going way too slow. But people who normalize your level of ambition are really, really important because, and maybe you found yourself in some of these situations, if you don't have those people and you're still sharing your really big goals and your very progressive growth goals with people who don't have that same level of commitment to their growth, nothing wrong with that, but it can start to make you second guess yourself. Like, well, gosh, should I be setting more realistic goals, or should I just be happy with what I've already achieved? When inside you you're wired to grow and to expand, and you're wired for more. You have to listen to that and find people who not only like outpace your ambition, and again, like your wildest ambition is kind of like their normal monthly goal, or just people who want to grow and are committed to grow at that same pace. Because what happens is, if you don't have that same hunger around you, even if it's subtle, you're going to start to diminish your hunger or feel really lonely in the pursuit of your goals if you don't cultivate this type of expander community around you. And there's this really interesting study that I just heard about, and I think it totally applies here. It was this study about high performers and low performers. And this is, in a corporate setting, in a work setting. But what they found was that the people that you're working closely with, the people who, in this case, in this study, you're sitting next to in a work environment. If you're sitting next to a low performer, your performance will suffer. Same is true. If you're sitting next to a high performer, your performance will actually improve. And the high performer impact is far more powerful than the low performer impact. But if you right now realize that even if you're not working in an office environment, you're building your own business, if you're not surrounded by other high performers, people who, based on their level of ambition and how fast they want to grow, they're not pushing the envelope for you, then I would guess that even if it's in subtle ways, your growth potential is probably being limited. So who are the people who, when you share your goals, they not only say, well, of course you can do that. And in fact, I need to make these two connections for you. Let me help make this possible. And I think you could achieve that in 6 months, not a year. I think you should think bigger. If you don't have people like that around you, this could be your slight edge and the thing that catapults you to the next level of success this year. I promise you it could be. Here's something to take into consideration and why maybe you've even resisted bringing these kind of expanders into your life, because they come with a certain level of accountability. And whenever I always joke with people that I'm not the friend to tell your big goal and your big idea unless you want to be held massively accountable. I will actually stop people when they say, oh yeah, I have this idea I want to share with you. I'll actually stop them and I'll say, I just want to pause you before you say your idea, your vision, because I'm not the person to tell your idea unless you want to be held accountable. Like next time I see you, I will ask, hey, how's that going? Did you take that action you said you were going to take? Because I can't unsee someone's potential when I see it. So if you don't have people around you that are holding you to that level of accountability, you are not as likely to push beyond your own limits. But it also just really takes a willingness to be held that accountable. And this is the group of expanders that's really going to do that for you, whether it's friends or a mentor, someone you're working with, a coach. Having this level of accountability for your goals, for your ambition, and someone who normalizes it and says, yes, that's absolutely possible. In fact, you could think bigger, but they're also going to hold you accountable to what you said you were going to do. This kind of expander is probably the most powerful when it comes to actual impact on your bottom line, on your growth, something that can fast track your success. The last one I talked about is probably the most powerful in terms of your own personal inner evolution. But this one is the most powerful for your business. And for me, it's the one that kind of like makes me start to sweat under the armpits, because I know that if I tell my goals to certain friends, that goal better be happening, because they're going to help me make it happen. They're going to hold me accountable. They're going to ask me consistently how it's going, and I can't hide. And if you don't have people around you who normalize your ambition, your big goals, then you probably aren't going to push beyond your current comfort zone. And that's okay. But just think right now, like who around you is equally committed to their inner growth as you are? And who are those people that are pushing you to think bigger and that are holding you accountable to your goals? And they feel like they normalize the size of your goal. Like they wouldn't at all bat an eye if you came to them tomorrow and said, okay, I know my goal last year was this, but in 2024, I'm doubling it. They'd be like, great, game on. How are we going to get there? Okay. So who in your life right now do you have that fits this qualification? Expanders who normalize your growth and ambition. The last category of expanders is more and more important as you go along. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not always great at celebrating myself. I'm not always great at pausing to acknowledge how much progress I've actually made. So having expanders that normalize your success is really critical to, I think, enjoying the journey more. I think it's critical to have people who, if you're not great at celebrating yourself along the way, like I sometimes can get caught doing, they're people who will make sure you celebrate, and they're people who you never have to dim the light of your achievements around. And here's the truth. The more successful you become, the higher levels in business you achieve, there's fewer people that you feel really comfortable sharing those big wins with. And that's okay, because some people don't even have it's almost like they can't even conceptualize how much work went into achieving that goal, because they haven't dreamed that big for themselves. And that's okay too. It doesn't mean anything, or it doesn't mean that they're ultimately going to be jealous or that they are going to judge you for the size of your success. But if you don't have people right now who they're like the first people you think to text when something really, really big and exciting happens, then that's a category I want you to be intentional about finding this year. And you may have them around you, maybe you just haven't shared. Or I think back to, there's so many times along the way where maybe I thought I couldn't share openly the successes that I was having. And that was actually more about me and my discomfort and my willingness to it felt vulnerable, to share the successes. And I would project my fears onto people thinking that they wouldn't be happy for me, when actually, when I got over myself and I started to share more, they were super happy for me. So again, a lot of these for me overlap. The girlfriends that I share my fears and challenges with, I also can share my successes with. They're people who I don't feel guilty. I never feel like they're going to judge me or be envious if I share my success. In fact, I know that when I share my successes, it only adds fuel to their fire for what they're working on. And if you don't have people that normalize these 4 areas, I'm going to give them to you again. The people who normalize your wildest dreams, the ones who normalize your fears and your challenges, the ones who normalize your growth and your ambition. And finally, the 4th one is the ones who normalize your success and celebrate it with you. These 4 types of expanders are ultimately, I believe, the winning combination for what it's going to require for you to catapult to that next level of success. Because the reason we say you're not meant to do business or life alone is that, can you do it alone? Can you be self-made? Sure, you probably can, but it's going to be a lot lonelier, and it's not going to go as fast as if you collaborate and you let other people support you on this journey. And it's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about what we're creating for multiple 6- and 7-figure businesses within the Powerhouse Women community, because I do find that at that level of success is where this gap in maybe not having the same level of expansive relationships and friendships and connections, where that gap really starts to show itself. So it's not saying that people at that level of business are better or anything like that. It's really just saying that it's at that place in business that I've noticed in my own journey, my needs really shift. And where, yes, it can feel lonely, it really can, but I know it doesn't have to, and it's just taken more intentionality for me to cultivate those types of relationships and make sure, on a season to season basis. So maybe every 6 months, I'm going through again and I'm saying, okay, who is really playing this role? Who's this type of expander for me in this season? Or are some of these relationships kind of just naturally coming to an end, or they're naturally evolving? And I'm ready to fill those spots with someone else who in this season really wants to play at the same speed and the same level that I do. So we're hosting a retreat. This is actually the first of something that's going to become a much more intentional, beautiful community within Powerhouse Women. The retreat is called Expanders. It's happening March 5th through 7th in Newport Beach, California. And it's a space intentionally created for women who are ready to expand. Yes, maybe you have achieved a lot. And on the outside, it maybe even looks like you're playing a really big game, but you know deep down that there is more for you. And more than that, you're listening to this conversation today and you're realizing, okay, my biggest goal this year, something that is going to be required for me to reach the level that I want to, is going to be to cultivate more of these relationships. And I don't know where to find these people. We're going to make it easier for you. We're going to put them all in a room, about 40 of them, and create the most intentional, deep, and connected 3-day experience that is meant to expand you in every single way. One of the biggest areas is in your network and making sure that you have this aligned community of people who really want to run at the same pace. So you can get all of the details. We actually launched it to our wait list. We've been talking about it just a little bit. You've probably heard it on the podcast. And once we launched to the wait list, it already filled up over 60%. By the time you hear this, we'll probably just have a couple of spots left, but you can get all the details. If you text me the word transformation to the number 602-536-7829. That's probably the best way to find out how many spots we have left, if you're a fit, and you'll get the link and all the details, as well as the application, because it is by application only. And just know that this is something that we are going to be really expanding upon. No pun intended, but really expanding upon creating this sub-community within Powerhouse Women, because I know from personal experience that as you get to these different levels of success, yes, it feels like there's less people that you can really unapologetically share your wins, your big goals, and your dreams with. And there's maybe fewer people who just understand the unique challenges that come with that level of business. But it doesn't mean that it's lonely at the top. It doesn't mean that you have to be a lone wolf in order to reach your goals. It just means that you probably have to put a little bit more intention into cultivating these relationships. And we want to make it easier for you to do that. So text me the word transformation. I would love to personally get to work with you, meet you, get to be in a room with you for 3 days, cultivating these kind of relationships. So text me the word transformation to the number 602-536-7829. And I cannot wait to expand with you in 2024 and beyond.